The people of northern Mali continue to suffer under the hands of Islamic extremists. Now the head of the African Union, Benin President Boni Yayi, is calling for a global coalition that includes NATO to intervene where Islamist groups have seized a large territory in northern Mali, spawning concern that the region could become a center for radical extremists. This week, Mali's army repelled an attack on its advanced positions, but by heavily armed Islamist groups. President Yayi spoke after a meeting with Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper, who said Canada would provide humanitarian aid, but was not planning to join the UN-sanctioned force.
Well, now, what do these developments mean? And will Africans accept drones, troops, and other foreign intervention on the continent?
For some answers, we turn to Sulayman Nyang, a professor of African Studies and Political Science at Howard University in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, Dr. Nyang.
Thank you very much.
And Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to both of you and all your guests.
Thank you so much. Well, let's start off with what we discussed at the very top of the show, and this is the talks that are going on in Libreville to do with the Central African Republic. What is your assessment of the situation there, and whether these talks can help to broker any peace?
Well, I think the Central African problem is a perennial problem. You have to remember Bokassa and the legacy of tyranny in that area. And you have to find out that since independence with Yulu, the priest who was the first priest president of a country in Africa, the people in that Central Africa have their problems, just like the Congolese and other areas. It's ethnicity, it's regionalism, and it is the use of resources. Now, the intervention of the United States, remember what happened in the Congo. You have international forces in the Congo. They were not in Central African Republic or even in Congo-Brazzaville. Now things are getting bad for Africa. Because if they use drones, which are used against the Islamists in Afghanistan and elsewhere, what they are doing now is you're getting the United States and other NATO powers involved in African issues. And the African Union apparently does not demonstrate any self-policing mechanism.
Yeah, but then I think that's what the dilemma is. When you look at all these conflicts, it seems like the African Union, for example, and the regional powers don't seem to have a real working formula, which makes people feel like maybe there should be some international intervention, even including in the case of Central African Republic right now.
Yeah, this is the sad case, because you see, what we are seeing really is the African governments fail to develop a high command. People like Osajifu suggested an Africa high command 40, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, that Africans should be able to police themselves. They have their soldiers mobilized for continental affairs. It's not happening. So it happened in Sierra Leone and Liberia. Nigerians were involved, and the Ghanaians were involved in West Africa. The South Africans and the others were involved in the Congo during Kabila I. They call it the Africans Force World War. Remember that? We are back to square one.
So what do you think would be the, the most effective solution out of these? You have, these rebel movements not only in Mali, but also in the Central African Republic, and, really making a lot of decisions, including, trying to force the elected government of the day out.
Yeah, you see, this is the big problem. I think there is an international responsibility. The international community has decided to make sure that the Africans take over their leadership. They have an African Union. The African Union must have teeth. That's why I like these women leaders now. If they can give teeth to it.
But now Boni Yayi is calling for the NATO intervention.
Well,
is that saying that they don't have teeth?
No, no. Well, you see, he is the leader of, he has played a role in terms of his own country in Benin. And he is very much aware of this. So he is banking heavily on African diplomacy to get international support.
Professor Nyang, I mean, you've been around for quite some time. We are, what, about 50 years since most of African countries got independence. Do you get a sense that actually these countries have matured enough to deal with their issues, or they're still at that infancy stage in the 60s and early 70s?
Well, you're raising a fundamental question. Two questions for the Africans. Are the Africans capable of governing themselves by accepting politics of compromise and bargaining internally? Which is the problem, because if people are not able to organize themselves politically at home, they expose themselves to internal external intervention. And when the African system internally is not effective, the Africans are going to depend on foreign forces. They have the weapons, they have the interest in the natural resources, and they are going to take the decision.
Where is the problem? Is it the current leadership and successful leadership, rather?
No, I think the current leadership is just poor and weak.
Pathetic.
But then that's not true across the whole continent.
No,
so
not all of them. We have 54
right,
states.
Right.
We have Botswana.
So they have to be
one good
addressed
example.
individually and specifically. Now, Dr. Nyang, before you go quickly, we want to talk to you very briefly, get your assessment of the fact that the Voice of America, which has for a long time been called a propaganda arm of the U.S. government because of the Smith-Mundt Act, which has restricted it to only broadcasting outside. The fact that that's going to change, is that a good thing?
No, I don't think that's going to change it, because most of the people there who are watching us here, they are going to say, we are going to listen to the Voice of America and we are going to engage the Voice of America. Now, if you come with a proposition now saying that the Voice of America should no longer be restricted to American audience, that is a no-start business, because the international system is so complicated. Today, if you take a decision like that, you're going to have the boomerang effect of non-functionality.
Long,
I want to thank you.
Broad topics.
Yeah, we need a lot more time
Thank
to
you
talk
so
about
much,
some of these
Dr.
issues.
Sulayman.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Professor Sulayman Nyang of Howard University. It was a pleasure having you with us
Thank you
today.
so
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Now, we want to know what you think about In Focus and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is VOA In Focus, and you can check our Africa headlines 24/7 at voaafrica.com.